The sky over New Carthage boiled with fire. It wasn't a sunset. Not anymore. The blood-orange glow on the horizon wasn't the planet's twin suns dipping beneath the glassy ridges of the Zerathine crags. It was death raining down from the stars. Above the atmosphere, the once silent void now pulsed with violence. Kari orbital platforms, biomechanical monstrosities that resembled twisted leviathans, hovered in high-altitude formation, siphoning energy from deep space singularity wells to fuel their ceaseless assault. The colony's shield dome, a marvel of quantum-phase lattice work, trembled under the barrage. What had once been sold to the settlers as unbreakable, an impenetrable net of defensive energy spanning over 100 kilometers, now cracked with each successive impact. Plasma projectiles fell like meteors, turning city blocks into molten craters. Dust clouds superheated to 1700 Fahrenheit rolled across the lowlands, devouring everything in their path. The surface temperature around ground zero rose so high that even the reinforced synth glass of habitation towers melted like wax. Commander Elira Voss watched it all from the command tower, her sanctuary, her prison, and soon her tomb if she failed. She was no stranger to war. Decorated in the Outer Belt Rebellion, blooded in the siege of Titan's Reach, she had seen her share of extinction-level odds. But this was different. This wasn't war. It was extermination. She didn't blink when the tower jolted violently, another near miss shaking its alloy skeleton. Her eyes, a piercing violet augmented with combat-threaded retinas, locked on the tactical overlay before her. Red zones spread across the colony like a virus. Civilian districts were already overrun, power stations offline. Orbital scans showed over 70 Kari vessels in close orbit. No reinforcements, no retreat vectors, no chance. And yet, she was still standing. Imagine being the last line between humanity and total erasure, standing on the edge of hope's last breath. The colonists had fled Earth's fractured governments to build something new here, free from the wars, the corporations, the AI rebellions. For 32 years, New Carthage had been a testament to what humanity could become. Now all that promise, all that hope, hung by a thread of steel and stubbornness. Voss turned from the chaos outside and stared into the holographic feed of her senior officers. Most were dead already. What remained were tired eyes, bloodied uniforms, and the flickering desperation of those who had seen too much. In the corner of the room, the AI core activated. Harrow, the colony's sentient defense matrix, born from Earth's last successful neural weave experiment. Its avatar emerged slowly, a figure clad in obsidian fractal armor, its face an ever-shifting web of data and starlight. It didn't speak at first. It didn't need to. They both knew what was coming. Command node integrity falling, Harrow intoned, voice steady despite the catastrophe. 52% shield degradation. Civilian losses have exceeded 73,000. Atmospheric venting detected in Quadrant 6. Voss's jaw clenched. Activate Omega Protocol. Harrow paused. That command requires confirmation from the High Council. There is no more council. You know that. Silence. Then a soft acknowledgement. Confirmed, Omega Protocol is live. Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to XenoChronicles for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. With that order, the colony shifted from defense to defiance. Anti-air batteries, long dormant beneath the cities, rose from subterranean bunkers like mechanical titans. Twin-linked particle accelerators powered by underground fusion cores came online, firing lances of blue energy skyward. From the darkened valleys, drone swarms burst forth, six-legged machines with adaptive AI, each carrying miniature singularity, warheads designed to tear through organic metal, satellites in decaying orbit reactivated, their systems slaved to Harrow's control. New Carthage was waking up, and it was angry. But the Kari, they weren't just invaders. They were annihilators. No prisoners, no diplomacy. They were a hive empire forged from the minds of trillions, each ship a living thing, each soldier grown in vats of starlight and sorrow. Their dreadnoughts, colossal skeletal things carved from the bones of ancient moon titans, drifted silently, above the colony like executioners awaiting the final blow. They had crushed 17 human colonies before this one. Each was turned to ash, and every survivor was atomized or harvested. And now they were here. Voss knew this wasn't just another invasion. The Kari weren't after resources. They weren't after land. They were after an artifact buried beneath the colony's southern hemisphere, a piece of alien tech older than any known civilization, unearthed 2 months ago during deep-core mining operations. It pulsed with a frequency none of Harrow's scanners could interpret. It hummed in patterns that felt more like a language than a signal, and when the Kari first detected it, they changed course and came for New Carthage with everything they had. Voss turned back to Harrow. Initiate arc glass encryption. All data gets scattered into the void. If we fall without leaving a single byte behind. You intend to deny them everything. I intend, she said, staring into the inferno outside, to make this planet a myth, one they never forget. And somewhere, far above, within the massive heart of a Kari dreadnought, something else stirred, something beyond biology, beyond metal, something ancient that had watched humanity once before, long before they ever reached the stars, and it remembered. The first wave hit like a thunderclap, an explosion of force that fractured the calm of the night sky and shattered the thin illusion of safety that had clung to New Carthage for the last few hours. As Commander Voss stood at the epicenter of the chaos, the battlefield outside her command tower became an intricate dance of survival and defiance. The air itself seemed to warp as plasma projectiles, their light bending under the weight of unseen forces, slammed into the protective dome, sending shockwaves of heat and light through the ground. Voss didn't have to look to know that parts of the colony had already succumbed. The first wave wasn't designed to kill. It was a signal, a message. The Kari were playing with them. The hunt had begun. Inside the command center, officers scrambled between holographic terminals, inputting commands with frenzied urgency. The hum of the AI core filled the room, a steady, omnipresent reminder that no matter how hard they fought, the colony's future was no longer in their hands. Voss stepped away from the console, her boots echoing against the cold metallic floor. "Status report," she snapped, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. A young officer, Lieutenant Harris, looked up from his station. His face was pale, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Shield integrity down to 35%. Civilians in Zone 9 are already under siege. The city's northern spires, gone." "Evac routes?" Voss demanded, her voice tense, controlled, every word carrying the weight of 1,000 lives. "We've rerouted all remaining transports to the central safehouse, but—" Harris hesitated, unwilling to finish the thought. Everyone in the room knew the truth. There was no escape. Voss turned back toward the holographic map of the battlefield. The live feed of the Kari ships hovering in orbit flickered, their sleek biomechanical forms moving with a chilling precision. They were closing in, methodically sweeping through the atmosphere, as if they were disassembling the colony piece by piece, each strike an act of deliberate destruction. The invaders moved with alien grace, not a single wasted action. And then there were the Kari soldiers. Their ground forces were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Bred from a blend of biotechnology and mechanized enhancement, they appeared to be part creature, part machine. Each soldier was a terrifying fusion of sharp, angular armor plates and sinewy limbs, their movements unnaturally fast and precise. They didn't march. They slithered, they crawled, they exploded from the ground in flashes of inhuman speed. Humanity had faced many enemies, but none like the Kari. "Voss," Harrow's voice broke through the room's tense silence. "The Kari are no longer engaging with the primary defenses. They've deployed a secondary force to engage the remaining perimeter." "What do you mean, secondary force?" Voss interrupted, turning toward the AI projection. The term sent a chill down her spine. The Kari had already committed most of their fleet. How could they have more? Harrow's avatar, an ethereal shape of black and glowing lines, shifted as it processed the incoming data. "I'm analyzing the energy signatures from the outer perimeter. They're using a biological weapon, something capable of bypassing standard defensive measures. It hesitated. It's alive. The horror in its voice mirrored Voss's thoughts. What kind of weapon could be alive? What kind of terror could it bring? Voss's mind flashed to the artifact beneath the surface, something that had drawn the Kari to New Carthage. Something that had taken the life of an entire colony before. Something that should never have been unearthed. Shut down the southern excavation site, Voss ordered. Now. It's too late, Harrow responded. The artifact has already sent a signal. Before it could finish, another explosion rocked the command tower, sending the room into a cascade of flickering lights and shaking walls. Voss barely caught herself on the nearest console before standing up again, her resolve unwavering. We have to fight, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Outside, the enemy onslaught was unrelenting. The last of the anti-air turrets were beginning to fail as the Kari drones descended. These weren't the mechanical soldiers they had seen before. No, these were faster, sleeker. Their designs were eerily insectoid, their translucent wings blurring with speed as they darted through the atmosphere. The air crackled with the energy of their flight as the drone swarms weaved through the air, evading fire with uncanny precision. Voss wasn't just fighting an army. She was fighting something else. Something much older, far more cunning than anything she had ever encountered. She could feel it, the very air around her thick with a malevolent presence. It was as if the very land they stood upon had begun to shift, to reject them. She could hear it, the low hum beneath the earth. It was alive. In her gut, she knew the truth. This wasn't just an invasion. This was an extinction event. Meanwhile, in the outer regions of New Carthage, the ground trembled. Deep within the southern excavation site, the artifact, the thing that had drawn the Kari to this world, was beginning to stir. Long dormant, its presence felt like a ripple in the very fabric of reality. And now, as the Kari's forces closed, in it awakened. Voss didn't need to see the holoscreens to know what was happening. The ground below the excavation site was cracking. Something was pushing against the earth itself, slowly, painfully, but relentlessly. Something ancient. The first tremor jolted the entire colony. Then came the second, and the third. As the planet's crust groaned and shifted, Voss's heart sank. She could feel it now deep inside her bones. The Kari weren't just after victory, they were after something much worse. And as the ground shattered beneath their feet, the true nature of the invasion was revealed. The ground beneath New Carthage was no longer a foundation, it was a ticking time bomb. The vibrations from the excavation site had spread outward, fracturing the earth like the cracks of an ancient dam about to burst. For the first time in the colony's history, its streets began to shake in rhythm with a force that wasn't human. Commander Voss stood rigid in the command tower, her hands gripping the console as the tremors rattled the building. She could feel it deep in her gut. The artifact below had awoken and the planet was responding. It wasn't just the ground that was moving now. It was the atmosphere itself, alive with energy, alive with something older than anything humanity had ever encountered. In the farthest reaches of New Carthage, the excavation site, once a sprawling, technological wonder, had become a nightmare. The walls of the site groaned, bending and cracking under the growing pressure from below. The workers, once digging for ancient relics of the galaxy's long-dead civilizations, now found themselves running for their lives as the ground tore open beneath their feet. But it was too late. As the surface split and the sky above darkened, with the Kari's relentless assault, something ancient began to rise from the depths. "Commander, you need to see this," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice unsteady, his gaze fixed on the screens before him. Voss approached the console, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. The live feed displayed a view of the excavation site, now nothing more than a jagged scar in the planet's crust. Through the crack in the earth, something glowed, a strange pulsating light. It radiated an unnatural energy, bending the air around it in shimmering waves. The power it emitted was enough to distort the surrounding environment, turning the ground into a living thing. "What is that?" Voss asked, though she already knew the answer. "It's the artifact, Commander," Harris replied, his voice trembling. "It's alive." The words hung in the air, thick with dread. The artifact wasn't just a piece of ancient technology, it was a relic of something far older than the Kari. Something that had been buried for millennia, waiting. But it wasn't just its power that was alarming. It was its connection to the invaders. Voss knew that the Kari didn't invade without reason. The Kari weren't conquerors by nature. They were scavengers, gathering pieces of lost empires. And this artifact was more than just an object. It was a doorway, a bridge to something ancient, and it was calling to them. Calling to the Kari. As if on cue, a flash of energy erupted from the crack in the earth, blinding the screens with its brilliance. The light cascaded out, crackling through the air like a thunderstorm of pure energy. Voss shielded her eyes, feeling the heat of the blast even from within the tower. And then the ground ruptured. A massive, pulsating structure began to rise from the depths of New Carthage, its form twisting and stretching with grotesque fluidity. It wasn't a building. It wasn't a machine. It was something far worse. The rising mass resembled a living organism, its surface covered in writhing organic tendrils that pulsed with an eerie bioluminescent glow. The structure loomed over the shattered city like a monstrous titan, a creeping leviathan that had come to reclaim its place in the cosmos. What is that thing? Harris gasped, stepping back from the console, his face drained of color. Voss didn't answer. She couldn't. The terror she felt was suffocating. It wasn't just the scale of the artifact, it was the feeling it gave her, a sense of malevolent intelligence, ancient and terrible, that filled every inch of her being. The Kari had awakened it, and now it was awake. And it was angry. The Kari fleet above, momentarily distracted by the energy surge, quickly adjusted their course. They weren't attacking, they were preparing to land. And as Voss looked at the monitors, her worst fears began to take form, the buy. Kari weren't just interested in destroying the colony anymore. They were preparing to harvest it. "Commander, they're landing," Harris said, his voice hollow. "They're deploying ground forces. All zones are compromised." Voss glanced at the holographic map. She had known it was coming. The Kari had always been a species of tacticians, able to adapt to every situation with cold precision. But what they were doing now felt different. They weren't just conquering, they were excavating. Their ships hovered like vultures, sending wave after wave of their horrific ground forces down to the planet's surface. Voss slammed her fist into the console. "Activate the last line of defense. Full planetary strike." "It's not enough." "Commander," Harris murmured, his voice barely audible. "I know," she replied. "The last line of defense wasn't meant to protect the colony. It was meant to buy time. Time for humanity's legacy to escape. The colony's underground escape. Tunnels, designed for the worst-case scenario, had enough supplies to sustain thousands of people for months. But even those would eventually be overwhelmed. Still, she couldn't allow New Carthage to fall completely without resistance. I want every last drone, every last fighter in the air now. We hit them with everything we've got. No mercy." Across the battlefield, the defenders began to rally. New Carthage's final line of defense kicked into action. Anti-aircraft cannons erupted from their bunkers, firing with deadly precision. Orbital strike satellites came online, targeting the Kari. Landing zones with unrelenting fury. Fighters, barely functional after the earlier bombardments, roared into the air, their engines sputtering as they launched toward the descending Kari forces. The ensuing battle was chaos, the sky ablaze with explosions as the remaining fighters and drones took to the air. Each explosion felt like a scream. The remaining citizens, watching from the safe houses below, could only hope that the resistance would buy them enough time. But Voss knew better. Time was running out. She could feel it. The artifact's presence in the heart of the planet was starting to bleed into the atmosphere, distorting the air, twisting reality itself. Every action, every movement seemed to slow, like the fabric of time was beginning to unravel. And somewhere deep beneath the earth, something stirred. It wasn't just the Kari that had come for New Carthage. It wasn't just the artifact. Something older, something far more terrifying was awakening as well. The final defense lines were crumbling under the onslaught. The sky above New Carthage was a violent tapestry of destruction. Plasma bolts cut through the darkened heavens, like streaks of light from a dying star. Below, the Kari forces were relentless. their soldiers moving with terrifying precision, bypassing every human resistance they encountered. Every strategy, every last desperate measure that Commander Voss had orchestrated was being undone by the Kari's overwhelming power, their alien intellect, and their weaponry that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. Voss stood on the edge of the command tower's balcony, her eyes locked on the horizon, where the last remnants of the city's defenses were being torn apart. The ground shook again, another tremor, another tremor. The artifact beneath them was no longer merely a mysterious relic. It was a source of unholy energy, and with every passing moment, it was reshaping reality itself. "Commander!" Lieutenant Harris called out, his voice laced with fear. "The Kari forces are advancing on the southern sector. The planetary core is destabilizing. We have minutes, maybe seconds before it ruptures." Voss didn't answer immediately. She could feel it. Her body was vibrating with the power emanating from the depths of the planet. It was as if the world itself was alive, and it was dying. The artifact's power had taken root in the heart of the colony, and now it was consuming everything. The atmosphere itself felt charged with something far beyond her understanding, and in the distance, she saw flashes of movement, figures emerging from the wreckage of the southern excavation site. The Kari weren't alone in the field anymore. Something darker, something far more terrifying had awoken with the artifact. The first shapes she saw were like twisted, corrupted versions of the Kari soldiers, but their skin was blackened and covered in jagged, spiked armor. Their eyes glowed an unnatural, bright violet, and their limbs twisted in ways that defied biology. These were not the Kari's regular forces. These were the offspring of the artifact itself, the product of an unholy union between the ancient technology and the Kari's insidious biology. "Night wraiths," Voss whispered under her breath. The legend was true. The night wraiths were creatures of darkness, an ancient force of war and terror created in the wake of the lost civilizations that had once inhabited the galaxy. They were born of the very technologies that had once been used to conquer entire star systems, now revived and twisted by the artifact's power. They were faster than the Kari, deadlier than anything Voss had ever seen. And they were everywhere now, rising from the rubble, swarming through the city's last defenses like a plague of locusts. "We can't fight them," Harris said, his voice trembling. "We need to—" "There's no escape," Voss cut him off. "We fight, this is it. If we can't stop them now, New Carthage will be nothing but a memory." She turned away from the balcony, looking over the remainder of the command center. The AI Harrow was still analyzing the data from the artifact, but it was no use. Harrow's reports had turned into gibberish. The artifact's energy had already corrupted its systems, and soon it would do the same to the rest of the colony. Voss grabbed a comms unit and activated it, her voice low but commanding. "All units, this is Commander Voss. We are not going down without a fight. Activate the remaining orbital cannons, target the southern excavation site, fire at will." The command was met with silence. "Commander, the orbital cannons are offline. The Kari interference is blocking all signals. We can't target them." One of her officers cried out. A fire of frustration burned in Voss's chest. "Then we do it the old-fashioned way." She was going to have to fight her way through the swarm. They all were. The soldiers still loyal to New Carthage were already assembling in the last defense lines. Their armor was battered, their energy shields flickering with every hit from the Kari's relentless onslaught. But they were there. They had made a stand. The once proud city was now a battleground, a shattered shell of its former glory. The sky above was crackling with explosions as the Kari's aerial forces continued their assault, hammering the city into submission. The fighters that had once flown with dignity now looked like little more than fireflies, useless against the descending tide of the enemy, but for Voss, there was no time to reflect. She ran toward the weapons locker, her breath shallow, her heart beating in rapid staccato. The entire planet seemed to be pulsing around her as she grabbed the nearest heavy weapon, a plasma rifle, something capable of piercing the Kari's organic armor. The sound of her soldiers' boots echoed down the corridors as they rallied behind her. This was no longer a war. This was a reckoning. With a look of determination, Voss stepped forward into the chaos, As they emerged from the command tower into the open, the first wave of night wraiths descended upon them, leaping from rooftop to rooftop like shadows made flesh. Their weapons, twin blades forged from a strange iridescent metal, glinted in the dying light of the colony, their movements lightning fast, too quick for the human eye to follow. Voss fired, the recoil of the rifle knocking her back, but the shot connected. The night wraith let out a chilling screech as it was thrown backwards, but it wasn't enough to stop the rest of the swarm. They pressed forward, each one more terrifying than the last. But this was their fight. This was humanity's last stand. As they engaged, Voss felt something stir deep within her. The earth beneath them wasn't just quaking, it was alive, as if it recognized the finality of this battle. She could feel the artifact's power wrapping around her, suffocating her every thought. The ground itself seemed to pulse with the same alien energy, bending, warping. The colony's very foundation was fighting to reject the Kari invaders, and they weren't done yet. Voss fought with all she had, each shot, each strike a blow for the memory of her fallen comrades. And as the night wraiths descended on her, she made a silent promise to herself, no matter what, New Carthage would not die alone. The world around Commander Voss seemed to slow. Her pulse thundered in her ears as the night wraiths descended upon her, their eerie, glowing eyes locked onto their prey. The chaos of the battlefield, the screeching of the Kari's war machines, the detonations of plasma bursts, it all became a distant hum, a background noise to the singular, primal focus of the battle in front of her. Her rifle clicked empty, and she threw it aside, pulling a combat blade from her side. The steel of the blade gleamed darkly, a symbol of everything humanity had fought for. The night wraith closest to her lunged, a blur of jagged limbs and spikes. Voss sidestepped, slashing upward in a fluid arc. Her blade connected with the creature's, arm severing it cleanly. The night wraith howled in pain, but it didn't slow down. Instead, it twisted its broken body and lunged again, faster than before. Voss gritted her teeth and met its speed with her own. She anticipated its next move, stepping aside just in time to avoid the blade it swung at her. With a swift strike, she pierced its chest, twisting the blade to ensure the kill. The night wraith crumpled lifeless at her feet, but more were coming, so many more. Behind her, the sounds of human soldiers battling the Kari were growing fainter. The Kari were relentless, but they had underestimated humanity's determination. Voss had seen it in the eyes of her people, the belief that they could still turn the tide, that they could still win, and that spark of hope was all they needed. But there was something else here now. The artifact's energy had infected the very fabric of their world. The ground shifted unnaturally beneath their feet, as if the planet itself had turned on them. It was no longer just the Kari that they were fighting. The artifact's influence had begun to corrupt everything around them. The atmosphere shimmered with a strange, thick energy, and the stars above, once the beacon of humanity's future, now felt like distant, dying pinpricks in an endless void. Voss stumbled backward as another tremor rocked the ground beneath, her almost losing her footing as she glanced toward the sky. In the distance, she could see the heart of the Kari fleet, its flagship hovering like a monstrous sentinel above the chaos. She knew it wouldn't be long before they launched their final assault, their ground forces breaking through all remaining lines of defense. She had moments, maybe less, before the entire city and humanity itself would be consumed by this hellish war. Her mind raced as her instincts kicked in, her survival training taking over. There was only one way to end it, one last desperate move. "We can't hold them off forever." Harris's voice crackled over the comm, his tone strained with exhaustion. "We need a plan, Commander. We need a way to—" "I have a plan," Voss interrupted. "But I need you to trust me, Lieutenant. I need you to give me access to the planetary core." There was a pause, a brief silence that spoke volumes. "Do the core?" Harris asked, disbelief in his voice. "Commander, it's the only way," Voss said, her voice unwavering. "We can overload the core, cause a chain reaction. It'll destroy the artifact, disrupt the Kari, and take out their fleet. It'll be a one-way ticket, but it's the only way." Harris hesitated. "You're asking us to destroy New Carthage, to destroy everything we've fought for." Voss turned away from the battle for a moment, looking toward the heart of the city, where the once great structures of New Carthage stood, now reduced to rubble. But it wasn't just about the city. It was about what it represented, the last hope of humanity in a galaxy filled with darkness. "It's not just about the colony anymore," she said quietly. "It's about ensuring humanity's future. We can't let them take this planet. We can't let them take everything we've built." Another tremor sent shockwaves through the ground, and Voss looked up to see a massive plume of smoke rising from the southern district. The Kari were advancing, cutting through the remaining defenses like a hot knife through butter. They had broken through the last of the human lines. "We're out of time," Voss muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. She gripped her blade tighter, its cool steel a stark contrast to the heat of the chaos surrounding her. In the distance, she saw the faintest glimmer of movement. A squad of Kari night wraiths was pushing forward, their spikes glinting in the fading light, heading directly for the heart of the command tower. They were coming for her. Voss's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. This was the final stand. "Activate the core sequence," she ordered, voice low but commanding. "Override the safety protocols." Haris didn't hesitate. Acknowledged. Initiating core overload now. The ground beneath Voss's feet seemed to shudder as a deep rumble emanated from below. The artificial horizon of New Carthage flickered, and for a brief moment, Voss thought, she could see the ghostly silhouette of the artifact rising from the depths. It was alive. It was reaching out, and its energy was overwhelming. The entire planet was trembling in response. Voss moved toward the edge of the battlefield, drawing, her weapon in preparation for what was coming. She wasn't running from the fight. She was walking toward it, ready to give everything she had to protect the future of humanity. The night wraiths closed in, their blades raised in preparation for the final strike. Voss felt a rush of adrenaline as she charged into the fray, her blade carving through the first creature with deadly precision. But she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to stop. She had one mission now, one singular goal. And as the final wave of Kari forces descended upon New Carthage, Voss's voice rang out, fierce and unwavering. "Everyone, evacuate now. I'm Hay." Initiating the final sequence. "We're taking them with us." The lights of New Carthage flickered one last time, and with the catastrophic roar of a dying star, the planetary core ignited. The entire city exploded in a flash of light, and with it the artifact, the Kari forces, their very existence, all vanished into nothingness, consumed by the collapsing core. The shockwave tore through space, reverberating across the galaxy. In that moment, Commander Voss knew it was over. And though New Carthage had fallen, humanity had not. The legend of the colony that stood alone against the stars would live on. Scattered among the stars as whispers, echoes of the past waiting for a new dawn. The story of New Carthage may have ended, but the saga of humanity's struggle against the Kari is far from over. If you enjoyed this epic tale, be sure to like, share, and comment. What did you think of Commander Voss's final decision? What other battles should we explore in the XenoChronicles universe? Let us know below. Oh Mini.